No, Sarah, nothing? Okay, well,
No, I have not heard anything, Your Worship.
5 o'clock, so we'll give her 30 seconds, I guess.
Excuse me, Your Worship, you're live when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Just hang on a little bit longer to see if Councillor Comey joins us. All right, 5:01 Council, so we will get to business. I will call the meeting to order. It's our first meeting of 2021, a new year, and we have lots to do, so we'll be busy. I'll read the land acknowledgement. Today we acknowledge that Collingwood is located on the traditional territory of the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island, including the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and Ojibwe peoples, and on lands connected with the Lake Simcoe Nottawasaga Treaty of 1818. This is the home of a diverse range of Indigenous peoples whom we recognize as contemporary stewards of the land and vital contributors to our society. And with that, I will move to the adoption of the agenda, and it is moved by Deputy Mayor Hall and seconded by Councillor MacLeod. Be it resolved that the content of the council agenda for January 18, 2021 be adopted as amended. And there is one item, addition of staff report CAO 2021-1, Business Accelerator Opportunity Assessment, January 16, 2021. Council, are there any questions or comments before I call the vote? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Next on the agenda is the declaration of pecuniary interest. Are there any declarations tonight, Council? Seeing none, if you find yourself in that position as we progress, please let us know in the general nature thereof. Adoption of the minutes of our meeting of December 21st, 2020 is moved by Councillor MacLeod and seconded by Councillor Madigan. Be it resolved that the minutes of the council meeting held December 21, 2020 be approved as presented. Council, are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I will call the vote then. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Council, is there any business arising from the minutes from the December meeting? Seeing none, then we will move on to community announcements, and I'll start with you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I have nothing this evening.
Councillor MacLeod.
Thank you. I am saddened to report that the Collingwood Curling Club's season has come to an end. Thanks to COVID-19 ending much earlier than anticipated, but on the advice of the Simcoe-Muskoka District Health Unit, the ice is being taken out as of this week. Well, they didn't say that the ice had to come out, just that it's unlikely that we'll be able to complete the season. So as the club is grateful to this council for extending the largesse that it has with regard to the loan payment, and we'll try again in October. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Madigan.
I wanted to give a quick shout out again to all our frontline workers, including all the retailers downtown, really having a hard go at it. But most importantly, the barbers and hairstylists. I don't know, for some reason, my son got me a clipper for Christmas and I thought I could cut my hair. So I'm faking it until I make it here. And I appreciate Councillor MacLeod's earlier comment that she doesn't like what she's done with her hair. I think it's fabulous. But if not, Marion, I can come by and help you out. Look at what I've done to mine. So come on by. We'll stay 6 feet apart. I'll just cut it on a pole. So again, just a shout out to frontline workers and the barbers. I miss you guys tremendously. And that's why God gave us hats. So I move that we are allowed to wear hats at council.
We'll take that under advisement, and I would like to see a video of that haircutting process. Councillor Doherty.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and I have just one, and this is a message to our local business community. And I'm sure there are many businesses are suffering because of being closed or significantly reduced sales volumes. A reminder that the federal government is offering loans of up to $60,000 as part of their COVID relief package. Even if you applied earlier in the spring of this year and were unsuccessful in receiving one of these loans, the criteria for approval has been reduced, and our MP Dowdle has encouraged any business to reapply. And if there is anyone who is looking for more information, the best avenue is to contact MP Dowdle's office directly. And that's it, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Doherty. And there's also the provincial program, anywhere I think between $2,000 and $20,000. So people can look into that as well. And if they do have questions, I know in the first wave, our Business Development Center was working very hard with our residents and businesses to match them with appropriate programs and get them information. And I'm sure that will be happening in this shutdown as well. Councillor Jeffrey.
Nothing this evening, Mayor Saunderson.
Councillor Berman.
You missed me.
My apologies.
My mind is reeling with hair clipper jokes, but none of them relate to the community, so nothing for me tonight.
And Councillor Hamlin.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to give a little more information about the Ontario program that you just mentioned. It was announced last week, and it is a program of money that is by way of grant. In other words, you don't have to pay it back. And it's for a minimum of $10,000 to a maximum of $20,000. Applications can be made now. And the businesses that qualify have to have shown a 20% reduction in revenue between April 19 and April 20. As I say, of 20%, but there are also different criteria if you're a new business that's established since April 2019, so you might still qualify. And just lastly on that, and I'm reading from the press release here, shutdown will be able, the province, shutdown will be able to apply for one-time grant and use this funding in whatever way makes the most sense for their individual business needs. For example, some businesses could need support paying employee wages, while others need support with their rent. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And we are into our first week of the shutdown. And so we're asking our residents to stay at home and leave home only for essential travel or work if necessary. And we will be providing supports through the town, through the Business Development Center. So if you need information, if you're a business who's looking to find out what programs you can qualify for, please contact the Business Development Center. And I know that CAO Skinner will be giving an update in terms of impacts for us at Town Hall and for our residents and issues about enforcement. So we will get that under other business. And with that being said, then we will move on to the consent agenda. And it is moved by Councillor Doherty and seconded by Councillor Madigan. Be it resolved that the general consent agenda, having been given due consideration by council, be received. There are 6 items. 6.1, Paul Ireland, letter recall for public meeting on the judicial inquiry. 6.2, Proclamation Crime Stoppers Month, January 2021. 6.3, Minister of Energy, Northern Development and Mines, removal of requirement to release a new long-term energy plan every 3 years. 6.4, COVID-19 Distribution Task Force Update, December 31 of 2020. 6.5, Georgian Triangle Development Institute, letter to Premier Ford, renew Collingwood Region Hospital. And 6.6, Tim Fryer, letter recalling the judicial inquiry next steps. And I will call the vote to receive and then ask if there are items that you wish to pull. So first dealing with the receiving, all in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Are there any items that you would like to pull? Deputy Mayor Hall.
Thank you. I'd like to speak or comment on 6.5.
Okay. Councillor Doherty.
6.1.
Okay. And Councillor Berman.
6.1 and 6.6. Thank you.
Okay. We'll start with the Deputy Mayor, 6.5.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. The reason I've asked to speak to this is just to provide some context. Neither in the title within the agenda nor within the body of the letter does it actually reference back to why this letter is being written. Councillor Hamlin was good enough to bring this matter to our attention at the council table back at the end of September, early October. Our local member for the provincial parliament, Jim Wilson, in a call to the community, requested that associations, that members at large join in a letter campaign in support of the Collingwood Hospital. This specific letter refers to a region and hospital in the plural, and that would be because it's in support of the two within Jim Wilson's riding, and that being the Collingwood General Marine Hospital and the one in Alliston Stevens Memorial Hospital. So I applaud the GTDI for heeding the call and drafting this letter, and would encourage others to follow suit if not already. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. All right, Councillor Doherty, 6.1.
Thank you, Your Worship. Really, this is just to offer some clarification because there seems to be continuing misinformation in the community as to whether there will be a public meeting held in regard to the judicial inquiry and whether the public will have an opportunity to speak. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I'm quite sure that based on the level of interest that the public will be made well aware of the time when the CAO's report comes forward and a meeting is held that would entertain comments from the public, but also that every person who wishes to speak, any and all, would have 5 minutes to speak on anything that concerns them or any thoughts that they have in regard to the JI. Again, just to dispel that information. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think I'll look to the CAO just to confirm all of that, and then maybe the clerk just to go over the basic rules of engagement or for the public through any standing committee meeting. So first I'll look to the CAO. Sonia?
Thank you, Your Worship, to you and through you to Councillor Doherty. And yes, absolutely. We are not only working, I'm working quite closely with Clerk Almus, who has taken some leadership on this file to produce a report back to Council, which covers the recommendations and the implications from the report itself, which we're targeting for the next month's February's SIC meeting. I hope we'll have the final report completed, but in any case, there will be an update on the status and the portions that are complete. And I will turn it over to Clerk Almus. As Councillor Doherty had mentioned, there are some opportunities on an ongoing basis at meetings to hear from the public, as well as potentially a series of public meetings that might follow the report. Clerk Almus?
Certainly, thanks, CEO Skinner, and through your worship to Councillor Doherty. That is correct. So similar to all of our standing committees, the process is that the public is enabled to speak without any form of registration, and that conversation at that level is generally limited to not more than 5 minutes. However, once the forum and the conversation and how that's set up has been defined and approved by council, there will definitely be ample opportunity for the public to participate, either within a virtual forum similar to this, or whether it's through our Engage Collingwood site and they want to submit something in writing for council's consideration.
Thank you, Sarah. And also, if someone wants to depute, then they would get 10 minutes. Is that right? So they need to contact the clerk's office and fill out the necessary form to depute in advance of the meeting.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
That's correct.
Councillor McLeod, I saw your request to speak card come up. Did you want to speak to this item?
The question that I had regarding timing of the report's delivery has been answered. Thank you so much.
Good, thank you. All right, Councillor Berman.
There we go. Think you forgot about me again. Yet I'd ask for 6.1, similar to what everybody else is saying. Sorry?
6.1 and 6.6. I had you down.
Okay, thanks. So just one specific thing, and it feeds on what everybody else is saying, through you to the clerk, and I think this is a rhetorical question. There's a line in Mr. Ireland's letter that says that the public comment is, quote, buried in an unadvertised committee meeting. And I just wanted to ask the clerk if she felt that was a factually correct statement.
Quick comments?
Certainly, through your worship, to Councillor Berman, that was a concerning comment that I read in that letter as well. I want to assure the public that the public comments are an advertised component of any sort of standing committee. Again, it doesn't have to be registered. All the agendas and information is provided publicly, and I encourage people to subscribe as well to through iCompass for the different committees that they are interested in. And if based on that comment too, we will ensure that the public is further advised in any sort of social media or newspaper item to ensure that there's, public is aware how they can work with our standing committees and council moving forward.
Thank you, Sarah. Any follow-up, Councillor Berman?
Not on this one, thank you.
Okay. All right, so this brings us then to reports, minutes of other committees and boards. Are we ready to go on 6.6? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Berman.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. Along the same lines, but I'll look to you where to direct this question. On Mr. Fryer's letter, again, along the same lines, there's a line in there, and I don't have an update, so I guess it would be through you to the CAO probably, that says, unfortunately, at an inexplicable cost of $10 million, have we spent $10 million on the judicial inquiry so far? I don't know that answer to that.
CAO Skinner.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're going to defer that one to Clerk Almas, and I think she has a response ready.
Okay.
Sarah?
Certainly, through your worship to Councillor Berman, the costs have not been fully compiled. I think that there was a few items that were coming in. It did not, I understand at this point, it has not exceeded over 8.5. However, those financial figures will be included in the JI report when it does come forward, so the public and everybody can be corrected on the proper amounts.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Sonia, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Clerk Almas. I did want to point out in general that when items come forward, as people on council would know, but the public who are watching may not, often there are many items that are the opinions and recommendations of the writer. And so you will find a number of questions such as this $10 million that the writer has, Mr. Fryer has provided in his letter, that are the opinion. And in this case, we've been able to clarify that is not the amount that's been spent to date. But I just want to note that those are the opinions of the writer and that everyone understands that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Any follow-up, Councillor Berman?
Yeah, just a little. I haven't read, and I didn't. I only singled out this letter from Councillor Fryer and the other one because they were on tonight's consent agenda. I haven't read the 18 pages that Mr. Fryer's had on the consent agenda since the judicial inquiry. But to follow up to something that the CAO just said, and I want to discuss it under other business. Opinions I have no problem with. As a guy that blogged and wrote newspaper articles, I love them, and I love them when people put their names to them. But 1 + 1 = 2, that isn't an opinion. So I just want to leave that, and I'm going to bring something up under other business related to the two questions I've asked.
Okay, very good. there any other questions or comments on these items, council? Seeing none, then we will move to the minutes from boards and committees, and we have the minutes from the Police Services Board meeting of December 7. It is moved by Councillor Jeffrey and seconded by Councillor Madigan. Be it resolved that the minutes of the following boards be hereby received and recommendations contained therein be approved. 7.1 Police Services Board meeting minutes, December 7, 2020. I'll call the vote and then I'll ask if there's any aspects to be pulled from the minutes. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Is there any aspect of the minutes of the Police Services Board that anyone would like to pull? I have Councillor Doherty and then Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Worship. Just to make comment and express appreciation in regard to the degree to which the police service, our police services have responded to citizen concerns about snowmobile operation on our trails. And I can see that there's been a very robust response in terms of not only police vehicle, but also pedestrian and police snowmobile surveillance of the trails to ensure that there are everyone is following the rules. And further, I see that they were successful in receiving a grant of an additional $1,500 to apply to a ride program targeted to snowmobiles and ATVs. So kudos to, I mean, our police services do a great job on all they do, but they were very responsive on this matter. And I know that there's a large number of folks in the community who are appreciative. So thank you.
Well, thank you for that, Councillor Doherty. I'm sure Chair Jeffrey will bring that up at the next meeting of the Police Services Board. Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two questions arising out of my review of the minutes and through you, and I don't know who would answer this. I'm just going to say staff, but if Councillor Jeffrey wants to answer, I'm happy to hear from her. My first question is exactly on the topic that Councillor Doherty was speaking about the Snowmobile Patrol. And I was wondering whether the patrol is going to be coming out on a regular basis or whether it still will be triggered by having enough complaints about a particular location before they go out.
I'll pass that through to Councillor Jeffrey, but I would note that none of the OFC trails are currently open.
Oh, I know that. Yeah.
So, and it is a connecting link, but Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. Firstly, I think they wouldn't do anything regular because then people get used to it. They're very spontaneous, even in the regular roadway ride program. So as long as the trails are open and there's enough snow for their sleds, they will be out when they see it's most prudent to be there.
Thank you for that. I have a follow-up. Because I was talking to some residents when we had snow, seems like a long time ago, maybe a month ago, I came to understand that our local OPP detachment only went out to investigate, complaints by residents of unlawful, I'll say unlawful activity or bad actors on the snowmobile trails, if they had sufficient complaints registered. So the detachment was encouraging the residents to call regularly or to go online and enter their concerns. And then they, as I understood it, the intent would be if there were, they would see that complaints were coming, let's say every day at 5 o'clock, there was someone, doing something on a snowmobile that they shouldn't, then they would send someone out, which is entirely different from what I'm asking, which is, have they made a decision? And do these minutes say they've made a decision that they're going to, and I use the words regularly, I don't mean, the same time every day, but without it being complaint-based, maybe I should put it that way, to check on the trails.
Councillor Jeffrey, do you want to take that, or CAO Skinner?
Yes, the CAO can
Okay.
add to or whatever. But I think for sure that information assists the OPP to identify the times that are maybe more busy or more active that they should be out investigating. The funding suggests that they will be out not just on a complaint basis, because they've taken that money out of the road. Because the funding came in late, they took those funds out of the roadway ride program, and that takes particular setup to go with that. So they will use that for a spontaneous response to, I would say, to the calls and things. But I see no reason. They seemed very intent at our meeting when they spoke to us about being on top of it. So I see no problem. I mean, there's only so many resources and can only go so far. They can't be out there all the time, but I know they're committed to making a difference.
CAO did have some. Okay, go ahead, Sonia.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you as well to Councillor Hamlin. One of the most important things that the Police Services Board does under the leadership of Chair Jeffrey is to set priorities for the Police Services Board. And in the minutes that are in actually today's agenda, they did confirm what those priorities would be going forward. So they do talk about safety, road safety, and I can't remember if they talk about trail safety, but I would group them together myself. And so they do decide what to do, whether they will be complaint-based or regular patrols under that general guidance on priorities that are set by the Police Services Board. And that's really how things happen. So I wouldn't doubt that complaints from the community or observations through the non-emergency line are quite helpful in them deciding whether to be a regular patrol or spot patrols based on complaints. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those answers. My second question has to do with there's something called Collingwood Town of the Blue Mountain Action Plan Priorities, and one of them is traffic, and it talks about working collaboratively to identify collisions, affected areas, and focus patrol strategies to address driver behaviors. So my question through you, Mr. Mayor, to our staff, I think for this one, will our staff be working with the OPP on the troublesome intersections? And I ask this because I know about a year ago or so, we received at council a list of where the most problematic intersections in town were for accidents. And I'm just wondering, as these are identified by the OPP, are we as a town working to change those intersections? Sometimes it's, I'll just tell you, I have to be frank, one that is always on my mind when I drive by is on First Street driving easterly, going through the intersection, the people turning left into McDonald's. I have seen so many near misses there as I come through that intersection. So anyway, for example, that one, if that was in fact one the OPP saw as one that was, causing a lot of accidents, does that information get translated down through to our staff and priorities for, making changes to road networks? So that was just my question, whether we're collaborating in that regard.
CAO Skinner.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Councillor Hamlin. Yeah, I think this is one where we look at the roles really of the different parties, and this is a good question. So the OPP are on the road, and their role is enforcement using the town's priorities. So they do that enforcement, and through being on the road, they have some insights and actually some data on collisions. However, the town staff under the engineering department also look at those collisions in different ways. So they might compare the traffic volume against the numbers of collisions and the types of collisions in a more technical review. For example, and thanks to council, we have a new engineering technician that will be doing that type of analysis. So sometimes it's not only at face value on the enforcement and experiences on the field, but both the enforcement experiences in the field and that engineering analysis that together bring forward priorities that should come to council for investment. So that's a long way to say yes. We are continuing to speak with the OPP from a staff perspective to make sure that we do identify the highest priorities for action. And Director Slama has been very involved in that. And I would also thank the Police Services Board and the folks who have spoken up there to help us to identify those places, both for engineering and for the Police Services Board. Thanks.
You follow up,
That's great.
Councillor Hamlin?
That's great. Thank you so much.
Councillor McLeod, I saw your card up. Did you want to speak to this item?
I have a question actually through you, Mr. Mayor, to Chair Jeffrey. I see that there's a new member of the Police Services Board effective at this meeting, and a quick Google search of that person's name left me very, very impressed with their resume. Is this now a full complement for this committee? I know that there's been a smaller number of members up until this time.
Chair Jeffrey?
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. Yes, we are ecstatic to finally be at full complement at the Police Services Board with the addition of yet another spectacular member from the provincial appointment system. So we're very pleased to be a full house now.
Thank you.
Good. Any other questions or comments on the Police Service Board minutes? Council? Seeing none, and we're on to item 8.1, the staff report. And it is dealing with the business accelerator. It is moved by Deputy Mayor Hall and seconded by Councillor Doherty. Maybe I'll read this all in after we've received the report because it's fairly lengthy and there may be questions that arise out of that. So why don't we go to the staff report and then we'll read in the motion at that point.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I believe that there is a short presentation which simply provides some of the titles from the staff report that was posted via the addendum that was mentioned on Saturday. So thank you to the clerk's office for making sure that got into your and the public's hands as soon as possible. And I just wanted to point out that so what we're doing here is looking at the business accelerator opportunity with a town lens on the drawbacks and or opportunities that an accelerator for local businesses might provide. And overall, staff agree that the business case is strong, and we don't have other than a few little things I will mention, we don't have concerns with the analysis or conclusions related to accelerating the growth of businesses, and accept that the consultant who provided the report, the entrepreneurial folks that participated as volunteers in the steering committee, and the project managers did a good job in that overall report. The questions remain are things like, how good is this business case compared to other investments, for example, that the town could put forward, and is this the time to go forward with them? And I do want to point out that this is an accelerated report back. There was funding available from the Center for Business and Economic Development, CBED, and they had indicated that they needed a council reply by today in order to meet their own deadlines. So we've attempted to do the best response possible in the time frame, and we'll see how well we've done through the council discussion to follow in addressing maybe some of the questions you may have as council members and may have heard from the community over the last week or two. On the next slide, what is a business accelerator? And I'm not the expert, but just for new listeners who may not have participated in the consultant report presentation to council on the later in December, it generally has been explained to me as something that would take over beyond the services that are our business development center currently provides. So if we're looking at the Business Development Center as something that really focuses primarily on businesses with no to maybe 3-ish employees, the Accelerator is looking at a different scale of businesses who are scaling up to from 3 to 10 plus employees and are looking for a different level of support. They're looking for external investors, and so that's what this would provide. It includes education and training, opportunities to expose people to networking and pathways to funding. And I do want to just be clear here, in this proposal and in a business accelerator, the municipality would not be actually funding businesses. This is not providing businesses with capital. It's providing businesses with education, training, networking, access to others who may wish to invest in the company. Typically as a physical location, although that wouldn't be that is not what's being recommended here in the first year or two. Usually the business would participate for 3 to 4 months and then graduate onward. And typically there'd be a focus on metrics within it. Probably in Collingwood, there would be also, and this would be supportive of a rural economic development grant, should we, in applying for one, and in fact, applying for a multi-year RED grant, they're called, that other opportunities to engage the business community beyond the number who are, the smaller number who are actively participating would likely exist. Things like chances to ask some of the mentors who are hired questions, forums where a broader number of companies could get involved. And if we could go to the next slide, please. There's been a history of this. It's come to council a number of times. I won't go into the details, but it first started in June 2019. So there's been a number of touch points where we agreed to do the study. We talked about the funding of the study and the report back leading up to the report back that I mentioned in December 2020. And as part of that, you will recall, but listeners may not recall, that council asked staff to go back and do a couple of things. One is this assessment compared to town priorities. And the other one was to do an Engage Collingwood public survey. And you'll see within the report that we received 50 responses, which is a good number, but nowhere near the 24,000-ish people who live in the community today. But of those 50 responses between January 7th and 12th, 70% were positive, 22% were neutral, and only 6% were negative. So the people who are listening about accelerators are quite positive about accelerators given that small sample size. Next slide, please. Well, strategic importance. Our community-based strategic plan talks about Collingwood as a hub of successful entrepreneurs and businesses offering rewarding jobs. And quite recently, I believe it was in November, Council also approved the Economic Development Action Plan. So one of the questions that always comes across my mind is, we know that Collingwood and South Georgian Bay have a true power place. We know that people want to be here. COVID has only made that more apparent. So the big question for me is, do we need to further invest as a local municipality in attracting businesses and further supporting the businesses that we have? And I think that both the community-based strategic plan and the Economic Development Action Plan have firmly said, yes, we need to act. It's not enough to be who we are. We have a business community that is exceptionally strong and also exceptionally supportive of each other and of the town. So I think that that is also a point to jump from toward actions related to the further success and support of businesses. There's 3 key considerations noted on this slide and in the report. One is tax-based diversification. We've been very, very positively served by the interest in people to live here. However, we have moved from about 60% of our municipal taxes being based on the municipal tax, the residential tax base, to about 85% being residential as opposed to commercial or industrial. So really we become very dependent on residential taxes. And we do have to think about the vision of our community, and we want active transportation, but we want people to be actively transporting themselves to work and back. But we need work for that. If we're going to have affordable housing, then we need people to have work so that they can achieve that affordable housing. And if we want to have a community for all ages, we need places for people to work, or we won't be able to attract and have all those ages. The last 2 bullets on this slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about together, which is the future of our Business Development Center and the broader South Georgian Bay. There's a few fundamental principles here, which may or may not appeal to council. But one is, do we want to be a leader in business development within South Georgian Bay? So that's one question. I propose that we do. We have been a leader of entrepreneurship, and that it is a role that's an appropriate role and in line with our vision for Collingwood. A second question is, do we want or need any eventual physical space that is created for an accelerator or adopted by an accelerator to be co-located with our Business Development Center? And our Business Development Center currently includes the South SBEC, South Georgian Bay Business Development Center. Anyway, the provincial funding piece. We only have a commitment from the province for another year and a bit for that provincial funding. So should we not be married with an accelerator or our consolidated investments in business supports, we will be finding ourselves with only our municipal staff in that Business Development Center. And I don't think that's going to be a strong focus for our businesses going forward. So I think that it would make sense for us to remain co-located. The 3,000 plus contacts that the Business Development Center has with businesses in our area would only feed and enhance an accelerator and vice versa. And finally, talking about the full South Georgian Bay. Absolutely, an accelerator, should one be created, should serve all of South Georgian Bay. And the other half of the Engage Collingwood results did support this strongly. 62% of the respondents lived or worked in Collingwood, 42% owned a business in Collingwood. So it was the business folks who were paying attention to the Engage study. And 14% were from the town of Blue Mountains, 10% from Wasaga Beach, and 4% from Clearview. And so they're looking at this idea of a business accelerator. However, what happened with our Business Development Center has been that when Collingwood took leadership, we've ended up being the major funder of the Business Development Center. And there's some figures in the report, but we're well over 500,000 a year. And other municipalities are in the, for SBEC anyway, $5,000-7,000 a year. So we're much higher. And I think that we should be very explicit about if we fund spots in the in an accelerator, that those spots should go to Collingwood businesses. However, with a larger intent to collaborate. And I do believe that there are more things we can collaborate on in South Georgian Bay. There's hospitals, there's transit, there's accessible housing, and that discussions on collaboration need to be broader than simply a business accelerator or services to business. But while we're funding those, especially at the beginning in this leadership role, we should make sure that Collingwood businesses get access to those spaces. Next slide, please. With respect to physical space and timing, this is the one quibble I had mentioned with the report. The business case that's provided by the consultant talks about physical space being invested in by year 2 with people in that space by year 3. I do think council may want more information prior to investing the 500,000 or a portion of that 500,000 in a physical space. If we were to do that in year 2, we would be making that decision. You would be making that decision at the end of this year when we're looking at the 2022 budget. I'm also going to talk about that as an off-ramp item in the next slide. If you decide to go forward today with this, the recommendation includes that 400,000 be set aside. It's proposed that that come from the asset sale proceeds and that it be earmarked for economic development, business development center, and or an accelerator. I did receive some questions before the meeting about whether that could be paid back in a future year, or for that matter, the final decision on that could be delayed until council makes in Q1 its overall decisions on the asset sale funds. And so those are open questions. I do think you could consider both of those options. The town in this proposal, the recommended option, would approve the commitment of $150,000 in 2021 to a business accelerator that would allow it to move forward now. And with 4 spots of the 6 being offered, guaranteed for Collingwood businesses. And we would seek $50,000 in additional funding from Simcoe County under one of their programs, and another $50,000 from neighboring municipalities who would then, for $25,000 each, get the other 2 spots would be worth $25,000 each for a total of $50,000, which could come from 1 or more municipalities. We'd also be applying potentially with CBED for the RED grant, which is up to $150,000. And all of these, should they come to fruition, would reduce the $150,000 that the town would need to commit. However, the town would need to backstop these in year 1 if these funding efforts were not successful from RED, Simcoe County, and neighboring municipalities. And we would like that the Center for Business and Economic Development, the federal entity, to be a partner contributor in year 1 and ongoing in-kind and or financial supports in subsequent years. Next slide, please. So there's the reporting and risk mitigation is that success metrics would be reported to council annually, including the status of the funding sources secured. This is not a forever thing. By committing in one, we've suggested that it be a 2-year period subject to the 2022 budget, that you consider an accelerator, and that should be timed to see if this is a good fit for Collingwood and if the initial cohorts have seen success from the program. One thing about an accelerator is that we're not committed forever. We would be able to walk away. And if we'd invested in, 6 businesses in the first year and some number of businesses in the second year, those businesses would continue to see the results of having the knowledge that they've received. And council could consider if they want to invest in more businesses or not. Board of directors, we think, should include your representative, likely someone from the business community, because they will need to have a business knowledge if they're on this board. And there's a number of items of accountability and transparency that would need to be established. Things like procurement and oversight, recruitment of mentors, etc., the reporting requirements, liability of the entity, and the selection of business participants to be open and transparent. Finally, the last slide talks about implementation. And option B, which is not the one in the red box, it's the second one down, is to wait. So one of the questions I received today is, does a decision need to be made tonight? So there is an option B and below, to wait and determine if we need to, if we'll find a collaboration with other municipalities in South Georgian Bay, and or if there will be additional grants. The one drawback from that is that we'll lose the $200,000 that's currently available from CBED. This is a viable alternative in discussions with the department heads. This is alternative B, was where a good number of the department heads were leaning. However, we have recommended option A. It does come with some concerns. Capacity, we have about 25% of the new economic development manager's time available. With CBED and other partners, we'll need to carry the load to develop the board of directors and the transition team for this implementation. At this point, for example, there would be questions like, with whom does a municipality negotiate to make sure that your requirements are implemented? Because there is no entity yet. We would be creating the entity. However, in full assessment, it does appear that if you wish to move forward with an accelerator, this is a viable option. Option A can be proceeded with, but you would need to backstop it with funding now from the asset sale proceeds. And I think that covers the major features within the staff report, and I would turn it back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. I think what I should do now is read in the full text of the resolution, and then we'll open the floor for discussion. So again, it's moved by Deputy Mayor Hall and seconded by Councillor Doherty. Be it resolved that staff report CAO 2021-1 Business Accelerator Opportunity Assessment be received, and the council endorse the staged approach to developing a regional business accelerator as presented in the South Georgian Bay Accelerator Business Plan. And the council support and retain a leadership position in the creation of an independent, not-for-profit business accelerator entity in alignment with the 2020-2025 Economic Development Action Plan, with the purpose of retaining and growing Collingwood-based companies by offering coordinated and targeted application of advanced business development techniques to help accelerate their growth and success. And the council set aside $400,000 of the asset sale proceeds for economic development, the Business Development Center, and or the Accelerator to be spent only upon council's approval. And the council approved commitment of $150,000 in 2021 from the $400,000 set aside from the asset sale proceeds to a business accelerator to get the entity started. And the council offered 2 guaranteed business spots to other local municipalities for $25,000 each, and apply to Simcoe County for $50,000 and backstop up to $50,000 of additional funding above the $150,000 if these requests fail. And the council acknowledged that the success of the businesses across South Georgian Bay are important and invite mayors or selected council representatives to a collaborative conversation in early to mid 2021 about their business development plans and needs. And the council support a business accelerator in principle for 2 years, subject to the 2022 budgeting process, to allow time for proven initial results and thus an assessment of the value of the municipal investments. And that Collingwood's contributions be contingent upon the following being in place to the satisfaction of the CAO. 1, the Centre for Business and Economic Development matching a town's guarantee with a $200,000 commitment in 2021 and continue to be an equal or greater contributor to the town in 2022. 2, Collingwood having 4 business spots guaranteed in the year 1 cohort and an agreement in principle that municipalities will receive business spots in accordance with their contributions. 3, agreement that should grants, such as a multi-year RED grant, be received that bring the total from municipalities above the $600,000 required in 2021, funding committed by municipalities will be credited to that municipality for a future year. 4, agreement that should Collingwood's $50,000 backstop funding be used, this funding will be credited to Collingwood for a future year. 5, a commitment to report upon success metrics at year end, including a report on public funders and total private sector contributions. 6, the board of directors include an appropriately skilled voting appointee by Collingwood's council. And 7, commitment to develop an MOU between the town and the Accelerator entity to set out roles, accountabilities, and transparent operating and governance requirements. So with that being read in, I will open the floor to questions or comments. And council, go ahead, Deputy Mayor, and then I've got Councillor McLeod.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. If I could take a moment or two to voice opinion in support of this particular staff report. I'd just like to preface my comments by saying that I believe I was the individual that the CAO was referencing that reached out today to request whether or not this could be deferred for another day. What I should have said was that it was in the context of being that delinquent student who likes to procrastinate. How much time did I have to review the appropriate materials that we received over the weekend? And in doing so, I got my act together. So thank you. This picks up on the report that was tabled, or the presentation that was tabled on the 21st of December, 2020. And I think that that presentation, the 2 individuals in particular who were part of that presentation, really laid out the foundation as to why this is a solid investment for our municipality and hopefully our neighboring municipalities to support sustained and continued economic growth. If I step back a few years and go back to the council I first served on between 10 and 14, in my opinion, and I stand to be corrected, there are very few things that a lower tier municipality can do to actually drive economic growth. We don't have the ability to bonus. We don't have the ability to provide favorable tax incentives for one class versus another, that type of thing. And the CAO is quite correct that we have the foundation from a natural standpoint as it relates to some of the physical amenities, whether it be the beach to the east, whether it be to the escarpment to the west, fantastic trail systems for hiking and biking, etc. The irony is that all of those beautiful amenities fall outside of the physical boundary of the town of Collingwood, and we for years have been able to leverage those amenities. But when I go back to the council between 10 and 14, I think 2 things that they did that have proven to be successful. One is that they were the first council to really step up and invest money in municipal transportation. They invested in municipal transportation within their own boundary, and we facilitated a link between Collingwood and the Village at Blue. And of course, in my opinion, that should be an asset that continues to grow. And there's been recent conversations about maybe taking that to the next level with our neighbors to the south in Clearview. And the other is the formation of the seabed, the building adjacent to Town Hall, where the four entities were brought under one roof to provide a common resource, a common launching point for people who are looking to make inquiries within the community. And I think over the time that has been established, their numbers in terms of who they have served, who they have benefited, it speaks for themselves. And this is just really sort of a natural progression in terms of what has already been created from that decision made back between 10 and 14. So those are, I think, sort of the key points that I just wanted to make. And in conclusion, I just wanted to say that we have all things that I think people are looking for in a community. We are aesthetically beautiful in terms of our downtown. We are naturally rich with our access to the water. We have an incredible wealth of talent in terms of people with expertise, backgrounds who are moving to our community, who are from the community, who bring a long-standing history, etc. But it would be wrong to simply rest on those foundations. We need to continue to drive forward because there are other regions and there are other communities who are equally moving forward and investing in their own communities and who offer many of the same things that we like to boast about here. And as migration from Toronto, from the GTA, from the 401 east and west continues outward, we need to continue to invest so that when people are looking to Collingwood, when they're looking to their options, Collingwood continues to rise to the top. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor McLeod, I have you next.
Thank you. I have a bunch of questions about this report, not the least of which is why it arrived in my email box at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night. I'm not sure to whom to direct that question, because it seems to me that we just went through an exercise wherein we decided when agendas would arrive. And it was quite a lengthy discussion and fulsome, and agendas arrive on the Wednesday prior to a meeting on a Monday, and we received this at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night. Is there an explanation for that late date?
Yeah, Skinner.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor McLeod. There's nobody who would have wanted that to arrive sooner, more than staff. The reason that one arrived late was due to the deadline of having the report available for tonight's meeting. It was a really quick turnaround to do the analysis, and the key deadline truly seems to be the seabed $200,000 matching funding. The original deadline was Friday, but they had agreed to extend it to today. Simply because, as I understand it, if they don't spend it on the accelerator, they needed to find other investments prior to February 1st. Really, that was a constraint on this one, trying to put it in your hands for tonight's decision. But I fully understand if you haven't had time to digest it, there just may be reasons to defer or refer that to another forum. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a bit of a list actually here of questions. So my next one is, have we approached as directed at the December the 21st council meeting, other municipalities who may well be partners in this? And if so, have we received replies from them? And if so, what are those replies?
I'll take that through to C.L. Skinner, but my recollection from the meeting in December was that we asked to reach out to other municipalities. I don't know that we defined any terms or conditions, but go ahead, Sonia.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Councillor McLeod. Yes, we did at the clerk's office. I approached the CAOs, and the clerk's office did send the council resolution and the consultant's report to Town of the Blue Mountains, the Town of Wasaga Beach, and the Township of Clearview. And we did, I received some unofficial questions back from staff in the Town of the Blue Mountains, which seemed like they were starting to consider whether they wanted to sponsor the equivalent of a spot or two but no decisions had been made, and they have not finalized their budget. And I did receive a note back from Wasaga Beach, which indicated that they needed more time to reply. And I understand that several of the mayors may have also unofficially reached out at the council level. And with that, Mayor Saunderson, I guess that would have been you that they talked with if you have heard from them.
Yes, I can confirm I've spoken with both Mayor Measures from Clearview and Mayor Celeber from Town of Blue Mountains, and had an email exchange with Mayor Bafolchi and Wasaga Beach.
And as a follow-up, did they seem to indicate to you, Mr. Mayor, that they were interested in taking part? The reason I ask this, of course, is that when we're talking about backstops and we're talking about funding opportunities being matched by other municipalities, if the likelihood that they're not going to get on board is higher rather than lower, I'd like to have that information before I vote.
I would say the response from Wasaga Beach was that there wasn't interest at this point in time, but the other two municipalities indicated that it was something they're prepared to look at. It's early days for them in both cases, but it's certainly something they're prepared to look at.
Thank you. In December, and it is contained within the minutes of our meeting that is in the agenda tonight, we gave the go-ahead for the CEBD, I believe, or for someone or other, to go ahead and apply for this RED grant. Do we know whether that has been done? I'm reading in the report that we can't expect to hear any kind of response regarding this RED grant until sometime in August. Has that grant been applied for?
CEO?
Thank you, Your Worship. I know that we have our experts on I've been speaking so far, but we do have our experts on the line. And I guess it's ex-Director Ridlow is still on this file. Maybe you want to talk to that one, please.
Good evening, Council. Through you, Mayor Saunderson, the RED grant, Rural Economic Development Grant, is due by February 1st of this year. We are poised to get it ready. And of course, that'll be in close collaboration with the Center for Business and Economic Development, because together is truly the benefit that we bring there. We've also been in discussions with the OMAFRA contact for RED for our region to understand what will make this the strongest potential application. And furthermore, the hope would be that our contact would have a chance to review that prior to submitting as well. So there's a lot of steps that still need to be done. Certainly one of the requirements that RD likes to see is a commitment from council to the project in some way, shape or form when that application goes in. So today is certainly one of those steps in the process that would certainly help with the RED application. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And as a follow-up to that, actually, while we've got Mr. Ridlow here, thank you for your contributions to our town's success over the last several years. I realize that you are now a former employee, but perhaps you're the person I can ask about why it is that the deadline is for this extra matching $200,000. This is not a unilateral and arbitrary deadline. This deadline is connected to this RED grant, or is it?
Pardon?
Through Mayor Saunderson, the Center for Business and Economic Development $200,000 contribution is independent of the RED grant. So the RED grant is a provincial fund. What CBED brings is federal funding to the equation. based on looking at a number of other accelerators, the best case scenario is when you have multiple layers of municipal, county, provincial, and federal government all contributing their part, because it diversifies the risk. But there's also a exponential growing factor. As you get some seed money in, well, then you can increase the money that you can get from the other layers. So by having commitment from CBED and potentially the town, that then means that our ask of the Red Grant can actually increase up to the maximum of $150,000. So it's a bit of a moving game, if you will. I liken it to Catan in some ways, where you're looking at seeing how you can, bolster your existing assets to get the most out of them and be able to achieve what I think all of us want is the best for Collingwood. How you do it, of course, is a question today. And so we've been working hard with our partners, provincially, federally, and county-wise to go, is there support for this? First of all. Second of all, how do we need to organize to maximize the support from those other levels of government?
I'm glad to see that you're playing Catan and not pandemic. Just another one, actually. Sorry, I'm not quite sure I understood whether I'm clear on your answer. So the CBED money is not connected to the red money, but the CBED money is going away as of February 1st if we don't jump on. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. The CBED, because it's a federally funded organization, has a fiscal year end that ends March 31st. And as a result, if they don't have commitment from the town, they're going to be in a position to seek other projects, but they need time to be able to find those other projects that they want to fund. And that's why they've given the deadline of originally January 15th. So they have enough time to identify other investment opportunities if the town isn't interested. So that's really the key opportunity here is, that's without any application, there's, so to speak, no work required in that. Of course, today is a lot of work. With the Red Grant, we've applied for them. We've been successful sometimes. We haven't been successful sometimes. And that's really the context of the discussion, at least when we look at the different opportunities before us today.
Thank you very much. And that concludes my questions. I do have a motion that I'm pondering, or an amendment that I'm pondering, but I think that I'd like to ponder it a few more minutes while other questions get asked, because I know that there we are. There are others who
I'm sure there'll be more questions, and hold that thought, and it'll be good to hear other positions as well. So I've got Councillor Jeffrey, Councillor Hamlin, and then Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I don't think anybody needs to convince me on the value of the business accelerator in the community, but I think there's a couple of chicken egg things, or some things that have happened in terms of the funding model, and questions that I'm going to have that are causing me some concern. So the first is the settings side of the $400,000 from the asset sale proceeds. I know that we've continually had input at the table that we want to have the discussion from the public input on the allocation of those funds. So for me, it's problematic. If we could refer that request to when we receive the staff report on how we're going to deliberate on, on investing or what we're doing with those asset sale proceeds, I would feel a lot better. So what that means is that the funding has to be contained by some kind of reallocation by council approval within the 2021 budget. And I think there's opportunities there with this emergency that's been called again with the pandemic, that there's probably new staff that aren't starting as soon as what we anticipated. So perhaps there's some dollars there. I know the supplemental is always very conservative in the revenue forecasts, and there may be some opportunity there. And then one of my questions aside from that is that we're offering to local municipalities for $25,000 each, but we're starting out at 37.5 minimum. And is there not an equal value to what Collingwood would be receiving to what the other municipalities would be receiving? So I'm just wondering if I'm reading that wrong, if there's actually a discount to the others we're inviting. And I agree with the CAO's comment that the attainable housing part has to match. It can't be one or the other. They have to be both in place, because there's no point in creating the jobs if people can't afford to live here to fill them. So we have our challenges going forward with that. And then another question, do we have 4 businesses? Do we know that if we create that spot for 4, that we have 4 businesses that want to participate in this? And from what I've heard tonight, I'm really not sure a deferral for a week is plausible, in terms of we would just be looking forward to adding another 200,000 to it if we deem it to be a valuable thing to do. So I guess that's kind of where I'm coming at right now. My amendments going forward, after I've heard everyone else, might be to consider referring the $400,000 request to the future discussion of the asset sale proceeds, and knowing that if we vote on this, somehow it has to get worked out of our 2021 money already voted on, and just maybe an answer for why it seems that the local municipalities are getting a discounted invitation. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. There was a number of questions there, so I'll turn it over to CAO Skinner, and she can work through the list.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Jeffrey. With respect to the 400,000 from the asset sale proceeds, I think that you could certainly defer a portion of that to the overall asset sale proceeds decision. However, the initial 150, if you wish to go forward today, I think that that initial 150 would need to have to come from somewhere. So the remainder beyond that, up to 400, could be deferred to another day with the overall asset sale proceeds. And then further, for the 150, should you decide to go forward today, first off, I hope it won't be 150. It may be. If we did receive the red grant, it would reduce it by at least 50, and then potentially more if we had the other, the Simcoe and another municipality or two contribute. There are some things that could possibly make it available in year, and you mentioned a couple there with the supplemental, potentially staff not starting as soon as we expected, although I hope they will. But the COVID changes and the extension of COVID, and the fact that we did receive some COVID funding from the province may help us there. However, it is very early in the year, so alternately things could go the other way, where we end up with more costs for transit or something unexpected. So certainly I think we could take it away and look at in-year opportunities, but I wouldn't be able to commit to you tonight. We have our new and our old treasurer on the line, but I don't think we could commit to you tonight that for sure that 150 could come from in-year. We could seek it in year. One of the other ideas that had been mentioned was similar to this year. If we took the 150 and it ultimately had to come from asset sale proceeds, could that be, repaid in the 2022 budget? And I mean, that could be under the direction of council. Should you think this important enough to proceed with, you could also ask that staff consider that opportunity and provide options for that in the 2022 budget directions. The discount to others, yes, it is a discount to others. If you went 100% at a fair 6 paces, divide the $200,000 out to 6 businesses, it would cost $33,300 for each business to participate. And what we really were looking at was that we wanted this to be a Collingwood-centric type of opportunity where the staff were relocated with, co-located with our staff. and that there was some value to Collingwood in having those types of opportunities within our municipality just for this year, year one. We might want to revisit that in years going forward, but there was an intention to build some excitement and to make it attractive for other municipalities to get in on the ground floor with us. And that was, it also worked out from a math perspective with the amount that was available from the maximum of the RED grant. And I was going to turn it over potentially to Martin Ridlow or Director Farr to talk to I believe your last question about having 4 businesses from Collingwood that would be ready and eligible to participate, please.
Go ahead, Martin.
Through Mayor Saunderson, the advisory group, informal one that worked with a consultant in developing the report, spent a fair amount of time analyzing the number of companies that are in Collingwood with that size of, call it 3 to 5 employees. That number over 700, if my memory serves me well. They further analyzed that to understand if there are businesses that would fall under the criteria that were defined on one of the first slides that CEO Skinner talked to. Looking for high growth, have intellectual property, are prepared to expand in Collingwood. And the team felt that there was at least a handful, if not more companies that would fall under the criteria that we were looking for. Obviously, a company has to apply and has to be reviewed for those eligible criteria. But there was a strong sense of confidence that, yes, that year one target of 4 companies could be met in 2021.
Thank you, Martin. Any follow-up, Councillor Jeffrey? You're muted, Kathy.
I pressed it, but it didn't go. Sorry. So I was encouraged by the CAO's response regarding the setting aside of the asset sale proceeds. So if I ask at that point, then that would be repaid from any 2021 surplus or in the 2022 budget failing that. So.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. And when we get to tabling it, I'll look to you. Maybe you can put an amendment, put some wording into that. And I know that staff has put that in previous reports, and I don't know, CEO Skinner, if that wording is out there that we could add in when the time comes. Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you. I am very much in support of the Accelerator program for our community. I wanted to thank staff, notwithstanding the late receipt of this report. It is very in-depth and, to my mind, covers all of the issues that, as a community, we would want to think about. There are a few items, really, I think they would all fall into the conditions that have been suggested we put in place that I particularly wanted to address. The first one is, the first condition actually, that for the second year being 2022, that the Center for Business and Economic Development, CBED, I believe Martin called it, would have to come up with the same contribution as the town. And my question through you, Mr. Whitmire, is whether our CAO is aware of this entity's budgeting for that year and whether they would have funds that could be made available for this purpose.
I'll look first to Sonia.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Hamlin. I know that Martin Ridlow's had a number of conversations in the last day or two with the CBED's, I believe her title would be Executive Director or Managing Director. And they're like us in many ways in that they're unable to commit funds for 2022 prior to that fiscal year. and it would be subject to budgeting, and it may also be subject to grants that become available for them to spend. So I think that the most important thing here isn't that we know for sure that that funding would be available, although I have, more than 50% confidence that they will be, but also that the town is not committed to go forward in this endeavor without its partners. So the preamble that is in the proposed motion says, to the satisfaction of the CAO, that they would commit equivalent to at least what we've committed, hopefully in financial funding and or in kind, as part of our condition of continuing to go forward in partnership. So definitely can't commit them, other than I think they are, from a staff perspective, and I believe from a board perspective, very supportive of an accelerator opportunity in this area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad to, because I had the same understanding that CBED, wouldn't know about its funding for 2022 yet. So that would be something I take it that we would work with them when we see what happens in 2022. My second comment is with respect to the allocation of business spots that's suggested. And I'm having trouble with agreeing with the concept, I guess, if I can put it that way, that there should be business spots attributed specifically to individual municipalities. And I say this because I know that CBED, which shares the business center with our own staff, their own purpose is a regional center, not solely directed to any one municipality. And the concept behind the accelerator, as I understand it, is that the businesses or the business spots that would be chosen are, as Martin has discussed tonight, are they local or willing to reside in South Georgian Bay? Do they have 3 to 10 staff and so on, not where specifically they're located? And the reason I don't feel that, notwithstanding we would be putting, a lead supporters amount of money into this, I'm not as concerned that we have a guaranteed number of spots, because I believe that, first of all, Collingwood is the business center in any event in this area. I have given it thought. I can't think of one other business park in Wasaga, Clearview, or the town of Blue Mountains. And that, in fact, we have the business park. And if, anyway, I think things speak for themselves. Also, even though a business, for example, if it chooses to locate in Clearview, their employees might live in Collingwood, and that might provide good paying jobs for people here that, they wouldn't have otherwise. Also, I understand, and this is information I've gleaned through talking more in the last day or so with people who know more than me, that the mentors who would be brought into an accelerator and the private sector fundraisers who are, I understand, are being looked at to also give $200,000 into this, they don't see the municipal boundaries as clearly as we do. And in fact, they don't see them at all. And so I think, it will be hard to, for the board to sit there and pick companies that will only benefit one municipality over another. I guess I'm just one of these who believe that we're a bit of a boat that, we'll all float up together, if I can put it that way, if there's any good to be had. So I will not be, I guess I'll be bringing a motion to eliminate that there be business spots guaranteed for any particular municipality. My last concern is with the board of directors, and that Collingwood be able to appoint a board of, a member, like council would appoint a member to sit on the board, if I can spit that out. I believe that the setup contemplated for this nonprofit would be to have a very much a working board to help the Accelerator get off the ground. They're going to help using their connections. They're going to do fundraising. They're going to establish the mentoring and the programming, hiring staff, set up the structure. And I don't feel that this is the kind of nonprofit that should have political influence. I believe that it should be something that, that the staff report, of course, suggests reports back to us, at least, maybe twice a year. And certainly our contribution is going to be limited to 2 years as it gets off the ground. But in what little time I've had to investigate, I think, or I'm told at least, that it's highly unusual to have a municipal representative to sit on the board of an incubator or an accelerator. So I'd like to finish this part by asking through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff, if they're aware of whether my information is correct, that it's unusual to have a municipal representative sit on the board of an accelerator. Thank you.
I'll look to staff. Who would like to take that question? CEO Skinner.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Hamlin. Yes, thank you for those comments. We have heard them before, and I think it is highly unusual, if not highly unusual, at least unusual to have a municipal rep, and certainly is not what was recommended in the business plan provided. However, I do believe that Collingwood is unique, and in recommending the recommendation that's put forward today, the premise is that Collingwood is a leader in South Georgian Bay, and that in the number of issues that we may collaborate on with other municipalities, that this would be one that would be a highlight for Collingwood. And I think that having a municipal rep doesn't mean that it naturally would be necessarily someone from council. What we're looking for is council's appointee of someone that council feels has the skills and knowledge that are required on the board. And I think that that level of link to a board of directors is appropriate. If unusual, it remains appropriate. And if you look otherwise, and there are viable options otherwise, but if you look otherwise, we're looking at entirely a third party, independent, new board that would run the accelerator. That is a flagship of our community with only the annual or semi-annual report backs. So I did feel that, though unusual, it made sense in this case for Collingwood to designate a representative that's appropriately skilled.
Thank you for
Sonia,
that.
any follow-up, Councillor Hamlin?
Yes, thank you for that answer. I'm just wondering, I really have two follow-ups to that. One, as other municipalities may decide to join in the funding of this, do you see other municipalities having a spot on the board as well?
CEO.
Thank you. I had contemplated that possibility, but really don't know what the situation may be. If it's municipalities may want to come in as full partners, they may want to occasionally have someone from their municipality participate should the spots be geographically assigned. And I think that the recommended conversation between municipalities, that's part of the motion that should occur in early to mid 2021, would be a good starting point for that collaboration and to figure out how that may work. So I don't know the answer to that question, Councillor Hamlin. Thank you.
My second question was, as I recall the presentation on the accelerator, and I stand to be corrected, But the intent of it is after a few years, it will be self-sufficient and not looking for municipal support. Would you see a Collingwood or other municipal representatives coming off the board at that time? Would it be a time-limited involvement?
CAO Skinner.
Thank you. Through you. I don't actually see it as a time-limited involvement, although I would hope that financially it does become self-sufficient. And the reason that I don't see it that way, and I think this would certainly be up for some consideration through the years of development. The reason that I don't see it that way is that this is so integrally tied to our vision for Collingwood. This is about, you know, what we want to be as we grow up and we fill in our development. And I think that there'll always be a municipal interest in what's happening with the Accelerator, and intent to tie it with the kinds of things that are happening in our Business Development Center. So I wouldn't have a final position on that. I certainly, that should this go forward, all of us will learn a lot in the next 6 months and certainly in the next 18 months. But that is my opinion today, that we have a long-term enduring interest in entrepreneurialism and business development in Collingwood, and that you do. It would be, you know, your selection of that representative and the tie to the Accelerator.
Thank you, CAO. Any follow-up, Councillor Hamlin?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My last question, and it's again about the board, and I hate to go on with this, but I am so concerned that this very much working board that's going to decide who gets the business spots and will raise money and, you know, direct mentors would become political. And not to say anything negative about any of our council members, including myself, I wouldn't see any of us having the necessary skills, if I can put it that way, to sit on this board and do what is necessary. And I'm sure, you know, it's the same with other municipalities in our area. We shouldn't have political entities sitting on here. Now, whether the person appointed should be reporting back to council and have that duty, you know, I just don't see the advantage. But, you know, again, maybe my question, and I hope this will be my last one, because I'm sure you're getting tired of listening to me, out to our CAO is, how can we get boards of director? How, if we were to have an appointment, can we, you know, ensure it wouldn't be a council member, but rather someone from a business community who this nonprofit entity would be welcoming in any event?
I think in the recommendation, it says the board of directors include an appropriately skilled voting appointee by Collingwood's council. So I don't think it's at all indicating it would be a council member, as opposed to someone that we deem appropriately skilled from the community. But I will look to CAO Skinner to fill that in.
Thank you, Your Worship. Clerk Almas potentially could be have some useful advice here about whether it could be, in answer to Councillor Hamlin's question, restricted to a member of the public as opposed to a council member if they were appropriately skilled.
Sarah?
Certainly, Your Worship. We have it on other boards, whether it be a local board or, you know, our previous, don't want to bring it up, affiliation with another corporation, but we do have the opportunity to either look within or go external. So based on the report and how it's been presented, I think that council will retain that option.
Thanks, Sarah. Is that it, Councillor Hamlin?
Yes, that's very helpful. So I would like to make a motion to amend this at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Okay, I've got that down. Councillor Doherty.
Thank you. I will speak in support of this staff recommendation. I believe that the need for this municipality to seek ways in better diversifying its job force base and its tax base is urgent. There's some figures quoted within the report of somewhere in the area of 80% of our tax base is residential right now. That's a very scary proportion, in particular going into what may potentially be uncertain economic times coming out of this pandemic. I see this as being an ideal use of the proceeds of the sale of our two major assets. Just remind council that this works out to at 200,000, just 1% of the total sale proceeds. And this is 1% that is invested again at a time when economic stimulation should be primary on our priorities as we go into the recovery period, again, from the pandemic. Also, I note from the report that each percentage point of change in our commercial industrial tax base is worth $350,000. So that is substantially more than the 150,000 that we are looking to invest in this year. In terms of the timing, I believe that there's wisdom in moving forward now and taking this initiative now. Again, out of the report, it is referenced that there are a number of other municipalities who are also implementing or have implemented some sort of an accelerator model. It seems to me that there will come a time when we would fail to achieve the kind of critical mass that we would need to attract investment and or to attract the kinds of businesses that we would like to be included in our accelerator. I also noted, as Councillor Jeffrey mentioned, that we were looking at, in effect, providing any other participating municipality at a discount per business participant, as opposed to what the cost of the town would be. However, in my view, because we were asking for double what their current contribution to our economic development department is, I thought that that was fair in the early days. The only concern that I did have has been addressed, and that was a recommendation that we would be investing in brick and mortar in year 2, because at this point there are any number of uncertainties, not the least of which would be how effective this program would be. And if we can postpone our financial contribution to a facility one other year until we have a very good idea of who is participating, how much money is coming from other sources, and how effective this program is, then I feel that that gives me a much greater level of confidence in moving forward with this recommendation. Those are my points to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doherty. Are there any council members that have not spoken yet who would like to speak on this item? Councillor Madigan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson, and thank you everybody else for their comments. They're greatly appreciated and understood. I'm not too worried about who sits on the board or brick and mortar, because I believe when we get this pandemic straightened out, we're going to see growth anyways. And Collingwood's always been the place to be, and people are coming here because of the lifestyle. But my main objection, and I'm looking forward to hear what Councillor Jeffrey or Councillor McLeod is going to put forward, is the allocation of the asset funds. I believe if we look at it as in it's only 1%, I think that's the wrong way to do it. It's not our money to spend at this moment. This council has been huge in being open and transparent, a phrase that's overused and not understood as well as it should be, unfortunately. I think the public should hear what we want to do with it before we make a decision. And the 8 o'clock Saturday night was a lot to take in. I did my best to get through it. But as it sits right now, I will not be supporting this as it sits right at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Madigan. Anyone else who has not spoken yet? Councillor Berman, go ahead.
Why not, eh? I'm not going to speak to the report. I'm going to reiterate a few things that were said, because this is obviously what happens when a 78-page report comes out at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night. One thing that I don't think has been mentioned yet, and maybe the whoever public or media are following this, is that I believe it's a procedural bylaw that we cannot submit written questions to staff and expect to get answers after noon on Friday, which means that a lot of what people are seeing tonight is because we haven't had a chance to ask these questions yet. I too have the big problem with the asset sale money. I want to go to something that the deputy mayor said. I don't think it's a secret to anybody that he and I are, at least at this point, been pretty good friends for quite some time. I think that I'm open to the fact that the idea that this accelerator might be a brilliant idea. But he referred to things that his previous term on council that they did. But there were a couple things we can't forget. That we just finished a process about a big decision they made without doing proper due diligence. We have not been able to do on this report. The second thing they did is that they spent asset sales funds before getting public input on it, which we're proposing here. So I'm a little bit like Councillor Madigan in that my biggest deal breaker here, and I disagree with Councillor Doherty, this isn't our money to spend. Not yet, not till we've heard from the public. Once they've told us, then it's in our hands. It's right now we're entrusted with it. I don't think we get to choose what to spend it on. So I too will be looking forward to any amendments. That's my biggest deal breaker.
All right. I guess I should speak really, because I do want to speak to this item, and then I'll allow others that have already spoken to go again. I do speak in support of this initiative. It is a big initiative, but it's not new. We talked about this in 2019. We referred it to a consultant. The consultant has come back. The timing of the report back to us was unfortunate. But there's a $200,000 item there in front of us, and we either take that opportunity or we don't. I think what I'm hearing around the table is general support for the idea of the accelerator. It's the timing and whether or not we're prepared to move to take advantage of the $200,000. And I am prepared to move forward on that basis. But I do share Councillor Jeffrey's concern, and I will look forward to an amendment. And what I would anticipate the amendment would be is that as in past monies that we have taken out of the sale proceeds during this COVID crisis with the contingency fund and with the interest that we took out to help balance the budget or put the budget through for 2020, was the understanding that we would revisit that decision, and where finances allowed, we would refill or repay that amount. And we've done that in both those cases. And I'm optimistic that we will be in that capacity again moving forward, or that we can take it out of another reserve to replenish what's in the asset proceeds. We have heard from the public on the asset proceeds, and I think we've heard overwhelmingly that they want to see us invest those monies in legacy funds that are investments in our community that will have an impact on us. And we've heard it through our community-based strategic plan, economic development and jobs and attainable housing, and all of those things that go into the mix of a healthy circular economy are a priority for our community. And we've seen in our economic development action plan that the accelerator and supporting local businesses as well as attracting new businesses is part of that plan. So I think that this is not something that is unanticipated or that the public is not aware of. I think the timing has become a bit of a crunch because of the opportunity for the $200,000. And I think with the changes that have been made through this staff report for a 2-year window to defer any brick and mortar for until the year 3, for an opportunity for us to have a look at how the impacts of this initiative are on the ground, I think it's an opportunity lost, in my opinion, if we don't take this decision tonight. But it would be on the condition that this council would be able to revisit the investment in the accelerator from the asset proceeds and repay those during the budgeting process or any earlier opportunity in 2021. So those are my comments. I will open it for some limited comments, and then we'll discuss the motion and potential amendments. And Deputy Mayor, you had your card up. I see you, Councillor.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. I always look forward to debating the merits of who is the starting goalie or who is playing who with Councillor Berman. I certainly continue to look forward to those debates. But I do take some exception to the comments with regards to the Council of 10 to 14 in the context that I think that it's a reasonable assumption that there is no greater critic of that council than myself. And yet you have to have an opportunity from time to time to step back and acknowledge some of the things that did happen under that council that were positive steps forward. I think that Councillor Berman and I would agree there are maybe some questions to still be answered as it relates to how, and I can, to this day, I can never get the acronym, but the seabed, how the seabed came to be formed. However, what I would suggest is that the success that that incubator has had between 4 organizations working under one roof, I would challenge anybody who would suggest it hasn't been a success. So is it fair to ask how it came to be? I agree with that. Does the merit prove out that it's been a success? I think the numbers speak for themselves. The other comment that I would just make is that this has been something that has been discussed and has been coming down the pipe. So I was the first to acknowledge and state that the report came out over the weekend, and I was the only one, to my knowledge, that reached out to the CAO, copying council, just to get clarity as to what we could do from an option standpoint tonight. Perhaps others reached out independently. I think that question's been put to bed. However, I go back to my comment about the presentation on the 21st, and parts of the presentation from a macro perspective that I thought were quite good and gave each of us an opportunity to do our own due diligence was the highlighting of other accelerators that have been established that are successful. And I would have hoped that others would have had an opportunity maybe to do some independent research, to familiarize themselves and to draw their own conclusions as to the success of those independent accelerators. Now, I recognize and acknowledge that in doing so, and there's been very good questions asked tonight, I'm not suggesting that the questions that have been posed tonight would simply be answered or all concerns would be put to bed by simply looking at the successes of those accelerators. I'm just simply stating that I would hope that in looking at what's been accomplished elsewhere, you would draw the conclusion and a comfort level that this is something worthy of investing. And I think Councillor Doherty's summation this evening in terms of the numbers as it relates to the investment up front, the potential in terms of some of the returns are bang on. And I will leave you with this thought, and that it relates to the asset sale. We are, in my opinion, very close to handcuffing ourselves out of fear of making a decision. I agree that the money is the result of two municipally owned assets. But I'm a firm believer that when you're elected, you're elected to make difficult decisions. Those decisions should be based on broad consultation from time to time. I'm not a person who's in favor of plebiscites or, and the other term escapes me, referendums. But consultation is the cornerstone of making good decisions. And I think that we are getting good information as to where people want to see money spent. And I think that we will have an opportunity to have conversations about the bulk or the majority of those dollars. But in the meantime, here is an opportunity to step up and to make a very, very small financial investment that I think has tremendous long-term financial implications. And those financial implications will then trickle out into so many other opportunities that will see further investment within the community, And so with that said, I really hope that we can put our money behind our mouth in terms of investing in the entrepreneurial spirit within the community, support this endeavor tonight so that they can get on with making it a reality. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak a second time to the matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor MacLeod, did you want to speak again?
Yes, I would like to move a motion to defer this discussion to the 2022 budget talks.
Do you have a seconder? Okay, it's seconded by Councillor Madigan. Deferrals, we don't have conversations. My understanding, is that right, Clerk? So I will call the vote then. All in favor of the deferral? Opposed? And that is defeated. All right, is there anyone else that wanted to comment a second time? And then I will go to Councillor Jeffrey for, well, I guess what we need to do is discuss how we're going to address the motion and sever out items or aspects. So before I move on to that discussion, is there anyone that wanted to speak again on this? We've had a good discussion, lots of good questions and information. All right, seeing no comments there, then I'll look to Councillor Jeffrey. And Councillor Jeffrey, your amendment was to deal with, I don't know if you have the motion in front of you, but it was to deal with the paragraph about the money coming out of the sale proceeds.
The third and that council set aside
Yes.
400,000. So it was going to be more complicated, but I think we've made it easier simply to say, to add on to the end, which any such expended funds will be repaid from the 2021 surplus and or budgeted in 2022.
Okay, I have some proposed wording. I can read it into you for you if you'd like.
Yep.
You would add on to be spent only upon council's approval with the expectation that it will be repaid from any 2021 surplus or from the 2022 budget, if not supported through the formal consideration and approved uses for the asset sale proceeds.
Perfect.
Does that work?
That works.
All right. So then what we'll do then is deal with this amendment to this paragraph, and then I'll look to, I know Councillor Hamlin had an amendment. So it's moved by Councillor Jeffrey, and is there a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Doherty. And then I'll open it up for discussion on the amendment. And I see Councillor Berman had his card up.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I guess through you to probably the CAO, I just want to kind of get the timing of what we're expecting. So when again, roughly, are we expecting to get a staff report and make decisions on the public funds so that how that would align timing wise with repaying the money from the surplus or the 2022 budget?
CAO Skinner.
Thank you. Through you to Councillor Berman. So it's our intention to bring forward the staff report on the asset sale proceeds within Q1. Given the workload with the judicial inquiry, I expect that will make the March meeting. So it would go to Strategic Initiatives Committee in the first week of March. So that would be the asset sale proceeds decision. The availability of in-year funds, while we may have some early indicators by March, I do expect it'll be somewhat later in the year before we have a full understanding of that.
Any follow-up, Councillor Berman?
Yeah, not an issue. Just to sort of answer one of the deputy mayor's concerns. I mean, I definitely don't feel handcuffed making decisions due to the money. I just want to make sure that the full amount of the asset sales dollars is currently what it is, and it's put aside. If we go ahead with this tonight and repay those funds from another source after the report from the public funds comes out, does the public still get, do we still discuss that full amount the night that the report comes out? Or will it be that report minus? I'm looking at Councillor Jeffrey, so I'm assuming that was the intent of her amendment. So let's say there's 18.7 million net from the sale, just to pick a number. If we borrow 400,000 from it tonight, we haven't repaid it by the time we make a decision on the staff report. We'll still be deciding on $18.7 million that night.
I see Councillor Jeffrey wants to speak, and then I'll look to the CAO just to get confirmation from staff's perspective. Go ahead, Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you. My intent is that we would have the discussion on the full 18.7 or whatever the number is, but with the realization that it may also include an approval for that economic development money anyway, but it would take that second approval.
CAO, do you want to add to that?
Thank you, Your Worship. And the one caveat that I would have is that the initial 150 and the potential backstop of the additional 50, we would have committed to an accelerator unless and until we can get that repaid through, for example, a RED grant and or an in-year opportunity that arises. So that consideration of the 18.7 would be minus that, say, 150, with some kind of an understanding that were we able to repay it, it would go into X decision of council, whatever pot council would decide to put that in.
Good, thank you. Any follow-up, Councillor Berman? Okay. Are there any other comments on the amendment? Councillor McLeod.
Just a request for a clarification because it's a long one. So which and that are we looking at? Is it like the fifth one or the third one?
The third one. It's the third one, Councillor McLeod, that reads, and that council set aside $400,000 of the asset sale proceeds for economic development, the Business Development Center and or the Accelerator to be spent only upon council's approval. And then the addition is with the expectation that it will be repaid from any 2021 surplus or from the 2022 budget, if not supported through the formal consideration and approved uses for the asset sale proceeds. You're looking consternated.
A little, actually, because that sort of goes to my request for a deferral to the budget talks. Like this makes that happen today, but puts it in the budget of 2022. Does it not?
That's one mechanism, yes, or 2021 funds. What it does is allow us, in my opinion, it allows us to deal with this request today and make a decision and then look down the road in the future to either recoup that cost through the 2021 budget if we find savings or grant monies, or through the 2022 budgeting process, or it would be an option for this council on the asset sale proceeds determination to decide that we wanted to make this decision and allot these funds. So it keeps, I think, many doors open. And I don't know, CAO Skinner, if you would like to add to that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I think this question actually illustrated something to me where I may have spoken without complete clarity earlier. Councillor Berman asked twice, I think, because he was looking for some clarity that Councillor McLeod may have just provided to me, which is we would be addressing the entirety of the 18.7 or whatever the total is. And in rereading this proposed amendment, you would be, when you address the asset sale proceeds, be addressing it in the entirety, because under this proposed amendment, if it wasn't supported through your formal consideration and approved uses for the asset sale proceeds, you would be asking staff to, in fact, repay that from the 2022 budget opportunity. Sorry, thank you for allowing me to clarify my answer on that earlier question.
No, that was helpful. Does that assist, Councillor MacLeod?
Sort of, thank you.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions on the amendment before I call the vote? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? And that amendment is carried. Councillor Hamlin, you had an amendment that you wanted to put on the table?
Yes, no, thank you. There are two. In the last paragraph of the motion, there are the contingencies that have to be satisfied to the satisfaction of the CAO. So my first one would be to delete the second one that says Collingwood have 4 business spots guaranteed in the year 1 cohort, and an agreement in principle that municipalities will receive business spots in accordance with their contributions.
Okay, so we'll deal with that one first. And do you have a seconder? Is there a seconder for that amendment? Okay, it doesn't look like we have a seconder, Councillor Hamlin.
Okay, I'll proceed to my second one. So the second last one under these contingencies reads, the Board of Directors include an appropriately skilled voting appointee by Collingwood's Council. I wanted to suggest that that be changed to say the Board of Directors include an appropriately skilled external voting appointee by Collingwood's Council for year 1.
Okay, and I'll look for a seconder on that. Is there a seconder for the second proposed amendment? Are you seconding it, Councillor Doherty, or do you want to speak?
Well, thank you. I would just like to ask Councillor Hamlin what her intent is. What I'm taking away is that external would be someone from outside of the community. Is that what you're suggesting?
I think Councillor Hamlin's suggesting not be a council member, that it be a member of the public. Is that correct, Councillor Hamlin?
Yes, appropriately skilled would probably mean that it's a business person in the community, but not a political council. Yeah.
Councillor Doherty.
I don't see the need for the amendment. We're saying that the Board of Directors would be comprised of an appropriately skilled voting appointee by Collingwood Council, not from Collingwood Council. Therefore, that suggests to me that Collingwood Council would identify the best possible appropriately skilled voting member from wherever that individual might come.
Yeah, I'll look to the clerk almost, but I think the wording contemplates that it could be a council member or it could be someone from the public. And I think what Councillor Hamlin is saying is she wants it to exclude a council member. That's my understanding. Councillor Hamlin, can you confirm?
Yes, that's exactly right.
All right, so do we have a seconder for this second motion amendment? Seeing none, Councillor Hamlin, I guess we won't be voting for him then. No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so then I think where we are now, Council, unless there are other amendments or requests to sever, we're going to consider the motion in its entirety, subject to the amendment of Councillor Jeffrey to the third paragraph. So unless there's, okay, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. I'd like to request a recorded vote.
Okay. So I am ready for the vote. I think we've had good discussion. I'll pass it to the clerk.
Certainly, thank you, Your Worship. A recorded vote has been requested on the motion as amended. All those in favor, please raise your yes signs. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your no signs. Thank you. Motion is carried.
Thank you, clerk. And thank you, council, for that. It was a good discussion on a large initiative. All right, I gotta find my agenda. So this takes us to notices of motion. Are there notices of motion, council? Go ahead, Councillor Berman.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I have two that are both about a sentence long because the clerks agreed with me to help me with the wording so they appear on Wednesday's agenda. The first one is about, we've been recording, audio recording in-camera meetings since almost the start of the term, and that was to be reviewed at the end of the judicial inquiry, which is now over. So I'd like to table the motion that we continue with the practice. You don't need any more than that, do you?
Clerk, is that enough? Yes, I'm seeing a nod in the affirmative.
And the second one, which is more relevant after the debate we just had than it was when I wrote it down, was I'd like to move that that neither council nor staff address the asset funds again until we've received the staff report and made a decision on the asset funds. I'd like to take the asset funds out of any discussions and any considerations between now and whenever the CAO said the report's coming out.
Beginning of March. So, yeah, okay. I think we've got that into the records then, Sarah? All right, are there any other notices of motion? I have two, actually, so I'm going to pass the chair to the Deputy Mayor. You're muted, Keith. You're muted.
Thank you. Communication 101. Mayor Saunderson, I'll turn it right back to you to read in your two motions or notices.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. The first one does follow, segues a bit from our discussion about collaborative and regional approach. And the motion reads, whereas Collingwood Council is dealing with a number of issues that would benefit from regional consultation and collaboration. And whereas Collingwood has a history of working with our neighboring municipalities in Simcoe County and Grey County, be it resolved that council support the establishment of a municipal forum that meets regularly, consisting of the mayors and CAOs of Collingwood and our neighboring municipalities to discuss and work collaboratively to address local and regional issues, and further direct the mayor and CAO to reach out to our neighboring municipalities to seek interest and, if supported, to jointly develop terms of reference with a shared mandate and equal opportunities for the participating municipalities. So that is the first motion. The second motion deals with the judicial inquiry and moving forward with the recommendations with the province. Whereas the Collingwood Judicial Inquiry was asked to examine two major transactions that the town of Collingwood engaged in under the leadership of the 2010-2014 Municipal Council. And whereas the Commissioner, Associate Chief Justice Frank Morocco, released his report on November 2nd, 2020, containing his findings and recommendations. And whereas a number of the 306 recommendations call for the province of Ontario to make changes to the municipal legislative framework, be it resolved that council support the mayor and deputy mayor in bringing a motion at Simcoe County Council seeking its support in lobbying the province of Ontario to make changes and or commence consultation with the municipalities of Ontario and other stakeholder groups such as the Association of Municipalities of Ontario about changes to the municipal legislative framework pursuant to the recommendations of Associate Chief Justice Morocco in a form satisfactory to council. So those are my motions. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Oh, thank you. And I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, if there are no other notices of motion, then we will go to item 10, which is the county report.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. There were just two items that I wanted to draw to council's attention as well as to the public. The first, this is in a continuing series on the subject matter of affordable housing. And again, the matter of attainable housing was raised in our earlier discussion this evening. And it continues to be an incredibly incredibly important discussion as we can move forward with 2021. This particular seminar is being, virtual seminar is being hosted by the county in cooperation with CMHC. It's on Thursday, January the 28th, 2021 from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. It is a forum on creating energy efficiency through passive housing. So again, this is a series. For those who are interested in registering, there is a email address, and I'll read it out. It's ahhps@simcoe.ca. Again, ahhps@simcoe.ca. And that is something that is open to members of council as well as the public who are interested in the subject matter of affordable or attainable housing. And the second matter is with regards to our long-term care facilities within the county. And a note that was sent out by staff last evening. In fact, our director, Jane Sinclair, who has been front and center in terms of fighting the pandemic within our long-term care facilities, as well as working with our paramedics across the county and in our two separated cities. For those who don't know the director, Jane Sinclair, she is recognized within the industry as a leading professional, and in fact has been called upon a number of occasions to give pertinent information, context, and clarity as to what's happening with regards to COVID and our long-term care facilities. We have some good news as it relates to the vaccination rollout. Of course, we're hearing numbers as it relates to the province, but we all know that the hardest hit in terms of those infected with the disease have been the demographic in our senior population, and in particular our long-term care facilities. And of the 4 facilities that are under the direction, leadership of the county, including Georgian Manor, Simcoe Manor, Trillium Manor, and Sunset Manor, Sunset being here in Collingwood, they have now hit a target of 91% of those who have now received the vaccine. So that's an excellent number. Positive news. We, of course, are well aware of the outbreak that took place in Beaton, and the fact that we were able to collaboratively work with RVH. And it was heart-wrenching to hear the stories of those who unfortunately passed, family members who had to deal with the situation from the outside, not having an opportunity to be with their loved ones. So this is incredibly good news that we are at 91% in terms of vaccination for those 4 centers as a whole. So that's great to hear. So, and those are the 2 comments that I just wanted to pass along this evening.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. That is very good news. And just to note that the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit has been one of the leaders in getting the vaccination out. I think they've vaccinated 9,000 residents of the Simcoe Muskoka area. So they are doing an excellent job. So Dr. Gardner and his team are to be commended. And that's positive steps. Leading then to old or deferred business and 11.1. Is there any old or deferred business, Council? Seeing none. Other business. Any other business? Okay, I'll start with Councillor Jeffrey, and then I've got the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Doherty, and Councillor Berman.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I was just would like to ask Director Culver to maybe give us an update with respect to the arts and culture feasibility study process. I know we talked about it in our budget, and I was just wondering if we could have an update.
Yes. No, there's Director Culver now. Go ahead, Dean.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. So a proponent, vendor, consultant has been secured, and we've had an initial kickoff meeting to date. Such things as public consultation and timelines were discussed. And right now the consultant is in the process of putting together a Gantt chart package that we can review and agree upon before moving into the implementation of their processes.
Any follow-up, Councillor Jeffrey?
Well, that's great. Thank you. I just had some people through the arts and culture community asking about it. So I thought we'd answer to everybody who wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dean. We'll look forward to hearing that as it evolves. Councillor Doherty.
Thank you. I received some comments and a suggestion from the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario Collingwood branch as to future composition of the Heritage Committee. And I did forward those comments to the clerk and the CAO. But further to that, there was a question as to at what stage the staff report as to ultimate composition of that committee and some other committees in the municipality sits right now.
I think that's Clerk Almas. Sarah?
Certainly, through your worship to Councillor Doherty, yes, we did receive your response, and that is part of the report that's coming forward. So we're anticipating either February or March at the SIC, since it's comprehensive of numerous areas.
Very good. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Question and a comment on two separate items. Question is with a preface, and that is that some time ago, I was appointed on an interim basis to represent council at the BIA, and I'd like to see that through to the end of this term. We've got a number of incredible initiatives that we're working on, but more importantly, the rollout of the new waste collection system is coming this year with a fall rollout. So procedurally, I guess the question is just how does that go from an interim to the permanent? And I'll leave it at that. And then I have a second comment.
Yeah, Clerk Almas.
Certainly, through your worship to Deputy Mayor Hall, I'll have to take a look at the wording of that original motion. And that could be something that's captured in that report to finalize your position on the BIA board moving forward.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, follow up? Or your comment, sorry. Go ahead.
If it makes it any easier for the clerk, I'm quite comfortable to continue with a $0 pay increase. It works well for me.
Yeah. We'll put it towards the accelerator.
There we go. The second, I wanted to make a comment based on the earlier conversation tonight that we had with regards to snowmobiling or sledding, and it's I'm not advocating one way or the other, and I am pleased to hear that the police service is being very proactive. It's maybe a comment or an observation that we could pass through to our Active Transportation and Trails Committee just for ongoing public awareness as we move forward. And that is that we've been, blessed with an incredible trail system, both within Collingwood, as well as the Georgian Trail, as well as all of the other neighboring trails, whether it be Blue, Clearview, Wasaga Beach. And we have rules of engagement within the 4 municipalities as it pertains to different uses. So one, I think it would be prudent that in the future, there be some conversation between the 4 municipalities as to how we can sort of tighten up our rules of engagement for the various uses, so that when somebody within the community, because Councillor Hamlin, when we were talking about the accelerators, she's spot on. People don't see the political boundaries. They see the geographical area as a whole. And so one, I just would like to see some thought given as to the rules of engagement. My observation to the uses is that there has only been 2 changes. The types of uses haven't changed. And the 2 uses that have changed is, one, more people are using the trails, which is fantastic. And the other I would suggest, and again, it's just an opinion, is that people are using these earbuds. And so whether it's sledding or a cyclist or whatever the case may be, a person with a dog, I've observed on a number of occasions where people, for example, like a cyclist is coming along and they are following the rules of the road, or in this case, the trail. They're ringing their bell, etc., and they're properly on the left. And the person that they're coming up upon has buds in and can't hear them. And I think that, you know, we could be doing a bit of a more of a proactive piece in terms of, you know, messaging to the community that when you're on the trails, you know, it may be not in your best interest to be wearing earpieces where you can't hear those around you. And the second is, and this is thinking more in the winter where we've got less sunlight and we do have sleds on the trails, that people, and I'm guilty of this, so I'm speaking from experience, I have an all black jacket. I have all black snow pants. And I need to be wearing something that has reflective material in it so that I can see those who are approaching me, but vice versa, they can see me at the same time. And so I would just convey those comments through maybe to staff, to our active transportation committee for consideration, that when they are continuing to do their really, really good work on public education, that those 2 points are taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor McLeod, did you want to speak to that?
I actually wanted to speak to both things that the Deputy Mayor just raised, and one of which is actually just to make a little joke, which is I'm keenly aware when I cross into Clearview, because that's when my dog gets off the leash. Sorry. I want to apologize actually to the Deputy Mayor, because several months ago I raised with him, having remembered that it was 6 months that the appointment was for him to the BIA, whether he would be interested in continuing on, received his reply in the affirmative, and put it in my mind that I was going to make sure I made a notice of motion, and completely and utterly forgot. And so I'm happy to make the notice of motion now to appoint the Deputy Mayor to the BIA for the remainder of this term, or whatever is required to make that happen, with my apologies.
Thank you for that, Councillor McLeod. I guess we'll have that read in and we can deal with that notice of motion at next Monday. So that's what we'll do. Thank you for that. Councillor Berman.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. So as promised, I'm going to follow up on the 2 sort of what I call rhetorical questions I asked under the consent agenda. I mean, I knew those 2 things were false, and I'm assuming all of council and staff and the media knew that they're false, but I think it's unreasonable to expect that the public knew that they were false. I think that we are, or I hope we are all acutely aware of what misinformation is causing all over the place, and even locally. I mean, when this meeting started, there was a story that came out that entitled "Misinformation Causes Confusion Around COVID Cases at Roberta Place," which I remember hearing about, but here's the story on it, all the way up to what we've been watching in the States. I think that we have, as a council, tried to do things to be ahead of the curve on climate crisis, on systemic racism. I think we need to make some sort of an effort to do the same thing here. I mean, we're watching Twitter putting, you know, phrases at the end of tweets saying this is not a factual statement. I appreciate what the CAO said. I have no problem with opinions. The more consent letters, the better. I love it as a former blogger when people put their names to things. I think we need to do something about, as the example I used, the things where 1 and 1 can't equal anything other than 2. And I think those are really what comes to mind, specifically false information about numbers. And the other one that we addressed with the clerk tonight was false information about our procedures. I mean, the thing is that when somebody puts a letter on the consent agenda, there's a permanent record of it on the website, and it can be used well down the road. I didn't realize the irony that Mr. Ireland's letter tonight was sent to somebody who also had a consent agenda letter a few weeks back using another consent agenda letter that was 3 years old. So there's a permanent record of these things on the database, and I don't think it's fair to expect people to know that there was a debate about something that was incorrect. So I discussed this with the clerk. I don't know what the solution is. I don't want any more work for staff. I don't want to stop anybody from writing anything. I think that we need to keep politics out of it. I think it could be something as simple, and then I look to anybody else's opinion, that if you see something that's, I don't expect staff to do this. If we as councillors see something that's factually incorrect on a consent agenda item, pull it, point it out. If it is, in fact, as I say, a number that was just made up, that spins a narrative, then when the minutes come out, staff can just note that. That's not the solution. That's just the first thing that popped in my head. But I think it's important, and I'm going to use a quote that's not mine, but that I think hits this home, is that people no longer choose the news that they want, they choose the facts that they want. And I think we have to take responsibility for what we're putting out there as fact. So I'm not proposing anything, I'm just throwing that out to my colleagues to see if anybody has anything to say or how we move forward on it.
Well, I think, Councillor Berman, those are all good points, primarily calling out if you see an inaccurate fact. But I think, I know in speaking with CAO Skinner and Clerk Almas, there was a proposal of a disclaimer on the consent agenda, just to indicate that these are opinions of the writers, and that we take no responsibility for the accuracy or inaccuracy. And I don't know if, Sarah, you wanted to speak to that, and how we would implement that going forward.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, we did have conversations. Actually, CEO Skinner and myself had talked about it last month, if not the month before, about a process that we can implement. So staff will investigate. At the very minimum, we can put some sort of disclaimer, as CEO Skinner mentioned earlier today, that, just because council's receiving it doesn't mean that you're approving the, accuracy of the information contained therein. But I think between us within our procedural rules and council and how those fit on the agenda and the accuracy, as well as just general inaccurate information, will be something between the clerk's department and the communications department moving forward. So we'll see, we'll look into some best practices and maybe come up with something innovative that will council can consider moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Councillor McLeod, you had your card up. Did you want to speak to this item?
I did, thank you. I wonder whether a simple note in the minutes about inaccuracies being pointed out might solve this problem. Might be very, very easy. If a council member notices an inaccuracy, brings it up, that gets put in the minutes. That might be something that one might like to explore.
See the clerk nodding. Go ahead, Sarah.
Through your worship, the reason why I hesitate on throwing that out as a quick, easy option is that council minutes are supposed to be without note or comment. So it would almost have to be in the form of a direction. So there is some further investigation that we'll need to do.
Thank you, Sarah. Councillor Berman, you had your card up again?
Well, first of all, I'm happy with the answer from the clerk of it, but it'll have further discussion. I think that's great. And I think Councillor McLeod was where I was, but a couple steps back. I didn't want to complicate it. So I think with her suggestion, somebody could pull a consent agenda letter, but then we'd have to make a separate reference to the minutes. I would have just liked, when this consent letter appears in the minutes, there's simply a circle around a number saying not verified by the town or something like that. And again, only on specific black and white things, not because somebody doesn't like the color of my suit or something like that. So I'm happy with the answer from the clerk.
Okay, thank you. That's it for the items I had down. I did want to just ask CAO Skinner to give an update since we've received the shutdown order if there are anything by way of update in terms of the implications for town hall and our staff.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think that staff have done a good job in summarizing a few of these on the town website. There haven't been too many changes to town services. We had been relatively proactive in making sure we were keeping up with and anticipating what we thought were coming from the province. So a few of those would include reducing the cap of the number of folks on the outdoor rink. But it is still operating. Thank you to the respectful behavior enabling this to continue. And Town Hall, as many people know, has had the customer service in-person opportunities reduced to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings. But the online, on the phone, and other opportunities continue on their regular hours. However, most of the questions that we're receiving are actually not about town services, but more about what people can do under this stay-at-home order, and about what our local businesses are able to do, and about enforcement. So we've had about a dozen calls to both bylaw and customer service, so a couple of dozen in total. And the town website, and I've asked that one of the pages from the town website be placed up on your screen here, directs people to a couple of places, which includes to the province for, not right with what's on the screen here, but to the province for the requirements, which are set out in a couple of regulations, 8220 and 1121. And they include a lot of detail about what businesses are allowed to open, for example, and what an essential trip might include. And as well, the Simcoe-Muskoka District Health Unit, of course, has wonderful information on their website with guidelines on many, many things that a person or a business, or in fact that matter, a government entity might want to do. Most of our questions, or a good number of our questions, are related to enforcement. And recently the health unit, the OPP, the bylaw officers, and myself met and developed this chart. And so I just wanted to tell people about it. I'm going to go through these lines very briefly, but they do talk about types of complaints or inquiries. So if you need to know about a non-essential business operating, you would contact town bylaw. You want to know about operating your own business. It talks about seeing the applicable regulations from the province. Social gatherings on private property are an OPP item. Social gatherings on public property would be our bylaw staff during the day and the OPP after hours, non-emergency line. Construction workers or Ministry of Labor. Businesses not following sector-specific health and safety rules would be the Simcoe-Muskoka District Health Unit. Someone not following the stay-at-home orders would be bylaw, or after hours, the OPP. And finally, anyone not wearing a mask or a face covering would be bylaw, and if necessary, they would involve others. And there's some great frequently asked questions below that. But in general, there's a quick guide. But if you're worried, you're not sure, you can always call the bylaw line and or the non-emergency OPP line, and we'll be able to support people within the community with the appropriate information, or if necessary, an enforcement action. Thank you for asking for that hopefully brief update.
Thank you, Sonia. Councillor Jeffrey, go ahead.
Thank you. Just a quick question on that chart through to the CAO. Is that a link that takes you to a phone number and or an email contact for bylaw? Everybody else's phone numbers are quite prominent and easy to find. Ours just says bylaw. So I'm just wondering if it might be better articulated where you can actually see it.
Yeah. Thank you for that question through the chair to you. Yes, that is a live link, but that is a good comment. We could also add the phone numbers in the chart. Thanks.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions or comments on that, Council? Good. So that brings us then to our confirmatory bylaw. It is moved by Councillor Doherty and seconded by Councillor Hamlin. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2021-1, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the regular meeting of council held January 18, 2021, be enacted and passed this 18th day of January 2021. I will call the vote. All in favor? That is passed unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Jeffrey, you are so entrenched in this role that it actually is on my motion. So moved by Councillor Jeffrey that the meeting of council be adjourned at 7:49. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, council. That was a busy meeting and a good start to the new year, and we've got lots before us. So thank you.